we are again, episode 4 of mountain biking in South East Queensland. Stoked to be back in the studio. We've got Hubcap and Oppy. We're continuing our chat about the future of mountain biking in South East Queensland. We got part of the way there talking about a lot of tech last episode. Now we're going to continue that conversation, maybe throw in a few random curveballs and surprises on today's episode. Who knows what we're going to chat about? We're here to just throw some comments around and see what sticks.
It's the Wing It episode.
It's the Wing It episode. Yep, that's the future of mountain biking.
Wing it.
Just winging it.
Wing it.
No organisation.
Hit it and hope.
Oppy.
So I do have a couple of things before we dive into the future. We had some wet weather tips. Since that podcast, it's gotten hot.
Heat wave.
And I thought, well, it might actually be fun to just kick around a couple of heat tips. I do have, I was out this morning in the very high humidity, and today is day 3 of a heat wave. And do you know what the definition of a heat wave is?
I don't. Is this a Bureau of Meteorology?
It is.
Thing?
Is.
Is
So
it consecutive days over 28 or something, or 32? Is it set something like that?
the Quizmaster.
Got a sound effect for that.
Yes! Oh, love it.
Sorry, I thought this was the mountain biking, not the meteorology podcast. I've obviously come to the wrong.
It's, yeah, I'm glad that's not quite in your reach, or we'd be having a lot more.
We would
sound
be
effects.
stuffed.
That's just a hint of what's to come. All right.
Okay.
So
Like,
what's a heat
what
wave?
does define?
So it is actually 3 consecutive days. You're on the money, but it is about the minimum overnight temperature. So
Right.
if the minimum temperature overnight does not drop below 20 degrees C, that's a heat wave, 3 consecutive days. And what it's to do with is people's ability to recover from the heat during the day by the cooler weather being able to reduce their core temperature overnight. So that's the definition of a heat wave. So yeah, it can creep up on you. So I work with some people who work outside in the sun. We had a guy with heat stroke, carted off to the hospital, and it was a cumulative effect over 3 days. No air conditioning at home, sleeping, sweating, so just be safe out there, be conscious of it. So yeah, drink lots of water, go in the cool of the morning if you can for your riding, wear sun protection. I've recently just bought myself a helmet brim from DeBrim.
Oh yes,
Yes,
I've seen that.
great out on the trails and training in the sun. One of the interesting things is if your head's level, don't notice it. Your head starts to drop. You can really feel the wind on it, the wind resistance when you're moving at speed. So I probably not for on the road and definitely not for racing. But downhill helmets have a peak. So a lot of your trail helmets have a bit of shade over your face, which does help. But yeah, can recommend the brim and the Lycra sun sleeves, because one of the things is reapplying sunscreen. You sweat it off if you're out there a few hours. I've found those 2 things recent additions to my kit. I've also got a flat cap that I wear now, and I'll be probably getting some a comfy cardigan and a few other things. So
When you're out on your penny farthing.
yeah, look, they aren't the most stylish. They are associated typically with older riders, but I highly recommend them. Sun damage is cumulative. So I'm of the age now where I really have to start watching how much sun exposure I get. Queensland is the skin cancer capital of Australia.
Of the world.
Of the world, yes!
World champions, I believe.
So I do have a couple of other tips which are a bit more in your field, as they are physiological type.
Here we go.
Not only drinking water, but also making sure you're replenishing your electrolytes, because here's the word of the day. Well, you can get into that, but here's the word of the day: hyponatremia.
Yes.
Is
Blood sodium levels below 135, I think, is the minimum reference range you want for.
Where's the button? No, I won't do that one.
Somebody look that up.
Where's the ding button?
There we go. It's low blood sodium levels. I think 135 is your minimum reference range. Don't quote me on that. I don't do a lot of stuff with blood electrolyte analysis. That is just I don't do any of it.
But you are a big fan of
electrolytes.
drinks.
Yeah, infinite nutrition on my cap here.
So and the reason I bring it up is because a lot of people sweat a lot of the sodium and the other electrolytes out, and they drink lots and lots of water, and water doesn't replace your electrolytes. And if you dilute the sodium levels in your body with drinking lots and lots of water after you're depleted, you get hyponatremia.
Yeah, I think cerebral edema is the biggest risk with that. Basically, your brain starts to swell because of the changes in the oncotic pressure in your bloodstream. You thought you were going to stitch me up on this.
No,
and I've actually shown up.
Yeah, I thought you'd have more detail. Handyside has a field of study, interest. What would you call it? You've got a career in the
allied health.
There we go.
Yeah. So, yeah,
That's why I would defer to you in matters.
Yes, and a long association with Infinite.
And they have balanced electrolytes and sodiums and yada 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 for
sweat testing availability and things like that.
Ooh,
so that's
sweat testing.
A new thing that's come on recently is you can sample your sweat during a train. It's a sensor that sticks to your skin.
So not just a swab.
That's not just, you don't just
just wring it out. Just put it in a vial.
Wring your sock out and put some electrodes in it.
Tasty.
Oh God. There we go. That's it.
All right. So I'm putting that out of my reach as well.
Let's change pages. Well, I took, so pre-planned, I took my daughter on 3 days of riding the last 3 days because she's got a new 26-inch bike. She's just upgraded from the 20-inch wheels. She was super keen to give it a crack. Day one was ride to the local pool, so it was just on pathways. Day two was all in the bush on the tracks, giving it a good crack. And by day three, she was, pushing and building that confidence and loving the hills, which was, crazy and exciting for me. But as far as the heat goes, yeah, we were out there. We were out during the middle of the day every day. But as far as our ride time versus like how long we were out there, the ride time was less than half of our time out. We spent so much time stopping, whether it was refueling, took a lot of snacks, chilling out in the shade, having water fights when we got to a tap, that sort of thing. So.
And she's okay, isn't she? Like, we don't need to call CPS or any.
She's raving about mountain bike. She's loving
it. #26 ain't dead.
That's right, yes. Yep, she bought a new bike, pedal in down at Wynnum, helped us out, grab a new bike for her, and she's just loving it.
Shouldn't it be pedal out?
It's in with two. Yeah, I get that's...
No.
Where's that buzz?
So
I'm going to get that soundboard on my phone.
This is what this is
for real life.
Oh.
Right. Well.
So anyhow, I just thought it was topical, and I think you can actually get quite unwell if you're not careful in the heat, and especially cumulative over a couple of days. So drink up.
Yep.
Anyhow.
Yep. Happy to say we're both still standing and had a great time.
Well, that's good.
But yeah, the sun was warm. So, what's the first topic of the day? Oppy has said he's got a few things up his sleeve.
I've brought in some props.
It's show and tell with Oppy.
What's in the box?
Now, is this the future or is this the past?
Well, mostly the past. Yeah, no, I was thinking about it. I could have put some future in there, but much like Schrodinger's cat. Do you want to have a stab? Do you want to have a guesses? What's in the box?
Is it some sort of walking clock?
Ooh, no.
Which is a Simpsons reference for those playing along at home.
Oh, okay. Handyside is the master of Simpsons references. The mean lord. It's a throwback to last episode.
It's not a flux capacitor.
No. It is actually... well, we'll start with this one.
The toe clips.
Pedals, yes. I actually went through the back of my shed and had a look. What do I have down there? And we were talking about the origin of clipless pedals and deriving from road pedals. And that's actually a single-sided road pedal with a nice French-made brevet, made in France, steel toe clip. So the leather straps have been repurposed elsewhere. I couldn't find one to bring today. Christophe. Do you remember the old? No, anyhow. But that evolved into the mountain bike pedal with as you can see, they're much broader, much wider, double-sided. And the origin of this was because we were talking about Shimano's first clipless pedals, and I couldn't remember the model number. And I actually have still a pair of my original Shimano 737 clipless pedals. I have the other in the box. So these date back to, I don't know, whenever it was, early mid-90s, and that was Shimano's first pedal, and they have they still kind of work. What's interesting about these guys was that they had a spring on the front and the back of their pedal on both sides when they first evolved, and they then made an LX version which was fixed on one side and only had the spring at the back, and the current model now follows this platform. So that's the LX version, the 525. So yeah, I actually remembered the model numbers. Terrible, but they're the original Shimano clipless pedals. And on the subject of clips and straps,
oh, here we go.
Clips and straps actually made a bit of a comeback with the Couriers, and these are actually off a fixie that I had, Sinelli track straps, and they got rid of the clip, and these were really big with the Courier scene and the fixie scene.
Yeah.
So just stick your foot in, and when you kind of straighten your shoe up, it sort of grips over. So you can see them. Well, maybe people don't know, but they're about 3 times the width of the original straps. So they straps did make a bit of a comeback in the 2000s, 2010s. I don't know, but yeah, and it was just fun going through the shed.
Yeah,
Looking at things from the past. And there's a couple more things in the box, which I'll save for later.
Oh.
So we talked about technology, and I have some old technology in this box. Anyone want to guess on this one?
is it the RS1?
forks?
Is it the original?
No, it is the infamous Judy. So this was probably a couple of models after they had the RS1, then the Mag series, Mag 10, Mag 21. But this was the next evolution of that. And you'll notice on this one, this is the Judy early, before they had disc tabs on them. So this is like a Gen 1 Judy.
Yeah.
The SL, this isn't my original. I had a Judy DH, was back in the day. And the SL had slightly shorter travel and titanium screw-in pivot bolts. But I can see that this is also the gen that had, because this was a period of fairly rapid development, this one doesn't have a cable hanger. So the first Judys, I think still you could run them with either, they had a little bolt-on hanger, so you could use them with either V-brakes or with the old cantilever brakes.
Yeah.
And there were lots of development at that time, and these used to flex a considerable amount, and it wasn't uncommon for them to basically crack across where the bolts were, which led to a fairly strong aftermarket industry. And as was the want back then, CNC machining was still huge. We were I don't have any purple anodized CNC machining, but I do have this rather nice limited edition Wilderness Trail Bike machined brace, which replaces this one here. I actually, at one stage, had a little bit of a co-sponsorship deal with an Australian import company that imported Velo Vito, that imported Sachs and WTB and a few other obscure parts. And my Judy fork had this brace on it instead of the custom instead of stock. I never used it with the cantilever brake hanger. It was a very nice little machined wolf head in there, which was the Wilderness Trail logo. But what was really interesting about this was not only could you run V brakes, but it actually had mounts up here for U brakes. So, yeah, back in the day, before V brakes were a thing, U brakes were roller cams even. No, anyhow.
No.
we want him to go into the world of under chainstay U brakes. That was the whole thing. Anyhow, so it was fairly common to hop up things or do your own product development or have add-ons. And this is one from the archives that I actually at one stage was making my own chain devices, and this is one of the few remnant parts from that. So that was an outer plate chain guide that I drew up in CAD and had someone actually cut up and anodise for me. So that's a nice little retro part that I keep on the wall at home. Gold anodised Oppy bash guard from a downhill bike from way back in the day. So
Awesome.
That is cool.
things from the shed. So yeah, just a bit of fun and games from stuff back in the day.
Yeah. If you're listening to this podcast, you'll have to jump onto the YouTube channel and check out these and see them.
Oh yeah.
See them up close. I didn't know what to expect coming out of that cardboard box. It really was quite a shock.
We might see if I can find some other trinkets from the back of the shed for future episodes. Blow off the spiders and clean out the dust. And
Bring the spiders.
bring the spiders.
Any show and tell, Hubcap?
I did not know that I didn't know we would be doing physiology, meteorology, or show and tell. The
Paleontology.
Again, your area because you lived it.
Oh, well, tell us about your last ride or your next ride.
Next ride Sunday, Wild West, XCO, Walloon, on the tail end of a heat wave, racing at the hottest, flattest, most accelerate breakingest venue in South East Queensland.
Most corners per kilometre.
There you go. It is not a place to race. I mean,
It's a great place. I love it. It's flat and it rewards skilled cornerers. So I like that. Those damn whippets and their climbing skills can't get away from me there.
I'll be out on the rail trail for the BVRT Australia Day ride for 40 kilometres or so, Fernvale to Esk. I think it's the 9th, maybe 8th, 9th or 10th year that they've run that just for people to come along and
have a ride.
Enjoy a ride. There's more and more bridges across these old, decked bridges.
Yes, I see another one just out of Esk. They've just announced the work start on it.
It's Sandy Creek, I think.
Sandy Creek next week, I think.
That's what you'll get if you go riding in the rain, because it's forecast this weekend. You'll end up with a Sandy Creek.
Can I complain about it for a second? My
Sandy
photos.
Creek?
Yeah, no, the decking of the bridges, because I would get great shots from down below looking at these bridges, and now you get a shot of what looks like a metal thing on top is the only way to sort of shoot it if you want the rider as the hero of the shot. Just my little complaint. I think it's a great thing, but I will miss my shots of riding through the little water feature on that spot.
We talked originally in this podcast about the ever-evolving challenges of mountain biking and how as much as it changes, that means there's always something new to learn. I don't perform particularly well on flat cornery courses or flow trails. I prefer raw kind of agricultural sort of stuff. And does that not then pique your interest? Like we have this great image in the background over here of you were just driving along the road. You're like, that's going to be a great shot. And you just pulled up and got the shot, because the photography now is ever evolving too, isn't it? So there's always, you can complain or you can go, okay, well, how do I do this then? I don't have, I know you love the little Kooyar Creek just out of Yarraman. It's a great spot to get a photo, but I mean,
I'll find a way to showcase the beauty and the history of the location, I guess is what I'm saying, is that you now have to, I guess I'll have to think about a different way to shoot
that's
it.
right.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
you're saying
sure.
you're over the bridges? Where's the
Sitting here trying to think of a photography pun, and I've done it.
You've
photography
lost your focus.
15 years of photography. I can't even think of one pun anyway.
You'd think it would just flash up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've
All right.
exposed myself.
Where's
We can delete that.
Where's the other way? Oh my god. Oh dear.
Speaking of and buzzers and fun, can I throw a surprise segment on you guys?
If I say no, will it make any difference?
It's just going to be even more surprising when it still goes ahead.
Come on down.
All right, I would like to thank a local writer and business. We're going to have a little segment now called the Forbes MTB Trivia. This segment brought to you by Forbes MTB. Thank you very much, Ben. And he's written in some questions.
Ooh.
And your job, I'm just going to give you some buzzers here. Bear with me for just
Do we need
half
buzzers?
a moment.
Or do we
Yes,
can we just
you
use
can
our
hold
name?
that. There you go. Now, Oppy, test your buzzer. Hubcap, test your buzzer.
I feel like it should do it like twice. Honks.
We will change that for the next one.
Please do.
Can we request or just randomly assign us some buzzers? That'll be fine. Shout out to Ben.
All right, here we go. This is from Ben.
G'day, guys.
You got to submit an answer now.
Yeah, what's the answer? All right, here,
20 inch.
listening, you can't buzz until you've heard the full question.
All right.
Okay.
G'day, guys. Long time listener here, Ben Forbes. Thanks for getting me involved, Lachie. All right, these questions are a bit of a mix. Let's see how you go. Okay, so the first question is a who am I?
Ben Forbes.
What was that? It.
Subverting this. Hey, man.
We have to listen to that from the top again now.
G'day, guys. Long time listener here, Ben Forbes.
I
Thanks for
can't
getting me
fast
involved,
forward.
Lachie.
You're
All
welcome.
right, these questions are a bit of a mix. Let's see how you go. Okay, so the first question is a who am I? In the early 2000s, there was a local hero of Gap Creek mountain bike community. He was a walker. He didn't ride bikes. But what did he do regularly at Gap Creek for the mountain bike community?
That's a bit of an easy one for me. He used to weed. It's Hugh the Lantana man. He used to do the. Yeah.
The answer to that last question was the Lantana man. So there was a guy that didn't ride bikes, but he would rip out the lantana with his bare hands. And Gap Creek used to be completely riddled with this stuff. Oppy would know all about this, being the caretaker at the time for the place.
Do you know all about it?
Yeah, Hugh the Lantana Man was a member of a group that's called Men of the Trees, which originated in the UK, and it was about stewardship of the land, and he was a member of that. And yeah, he would, he was retired, and Lantana, or Rocket Frog as it's now known, he used to regularly go through there. And he removed the lantana, and because the rate at which it grows was over closing the trails. And yeah, he'd be very happy to see the work that's done in that corridor, the improvements to the mountain bike trail, and the plantings that have gone along in that corridor since.
Yeah, right.
So that was a bit of an easy one. I think you got shafted there, quite honestly.
Yeah.
All right. What was the first track of Gap Creek? What was it called and why?
See, this is just this is very, very local specific. I'm going to date myself. I have to be a little bit mindful of this. There were trails at Gap Creek well before they were authorised, and there were actually trails before it was, because at one point mountain biking was prohibited there. So before the banning, there used to be a trail there that came down from the intersection of Dillon and Highwood Road and ran down the ridge to where the picnic area is now. It's currently called the Quail Trail. It used to be called Magic. That's my answer. I'm going to guess.
First track of Gap Creek was called Muddy Mile.
Muddy Mile.
So basically where Rocket Frog is now, there's a creek, and the track was just the creek. You would just ride straight up the creek. It was pretty much always wet. There was a lot more of a creek back then, so it was just always muddy, hence Muddy Mile.
So that's
So I'm going to give that as a no to Ben. So I'm older than Ben.
oh,
Ooh.
I remember Ben when he was like this big. And I remember Ben when he had training wheels. So before the banning, in fact, predating the management by Brisbane's park area, it used to actually be, that whole area used to be kind of managed partly by Brisbane Forest Park National Parks, and I think the area that maybe the Botanic Gardens also had custodianship of management. And there were only vehicle tracks in there, and old vehicle tracks. Muddy Mile is the bottom of Lantana. That was realigned up out of the creek, and that valley flows all the way back to the reserve. Hence why it was muddy and would stay muddy for such a long time. So that trail was a logging trail. And the very end of Rocket Frog, where it meets Dillon Road, you can actually see on the 46 aerial photograph that was cleared because they were actually removing timber from the forest. It was a working forest back then. It was a reserve for railway purposes. So they used to take the big trees to turn into lumber and make carriages out of it. The smaller but tall and straight trees they would take for telegraph poles alongside the railways, and anything that was smaller than that they would take and turn into timber for fuel for steam engines, basically. So Mount Cootha was, heavily used as an industrial history. There was also mining, gold mining in the western part of Mount Cootha, hence the most western portion of Mount Cootha is called Gold Creek Reserve, Gold Creek Reservoir and Gold Creek, all up in that direction. So there's a really deep history to Mount Cootha. So, look, it might be the first one he remembers. Certainly, I would say the first real single track, because that when they were forestry roads, they were wide and gradually grew in with the disturbance from the clear felling allowed the Lantana to get a real stranglehold, and that's why it was so narrow so quickly. So, a little bit of history that predates Ben, but I'll leave that one go through to the keeper.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Come for the trivia, stay for the history lesson. That's fantastic. All right, are you ready for question 3?
Hopefully this is one handy so I could actually answer.
Yeah.
It's about cerebral edema.
Well, Hubcap might have a chance. I think the next two
here we go.
may be a bit more.
Come in, Spinner.
How many bike races did I do in 2012?
I'm going to say something in the order of... I was going to say 40.
Ooh, I'm going to give you a... Pretty good.
The answer is 42.
Oh, of course.
The reason that year was particularly big was the selection camps for the cross-country mountain bike team for World Champs involved 13 road races. And along with all the downhill racing, marathon racing, the whole cross-country national series of championships and all that stuff, it added up to 42.
Yeah, it's a lot of racing.
That's a good number.
I thought it was just because that's the answer to the question.
It is. I have that on a T-shirt. Not tonight's T-shirt. It's mine. Epic.
You ready for the final question?
Here we go. I think this one's worth 500 points.
This
Is the one that takes the
winner
win.
take all.
Winner take all. Yep.
only as good as your last question.
What location secured $8.2 million from their government to build a bike park? The hint is it's not in Queensland, but it's 3.5 hours from Brisbane, so much closer to Brisbane than Sydney.
Oppy has hit the buzzer.
Omeo. Is it Omeo? Is that right?
Whereabouts is Omeo?
Oh, I'm trying to think.
I think it's...
Well, that's not the right answer.
No.
What am I thinking of? Is that the right town?
Isn't that south of Sydney? Omeo?
Oh.
Is that the place
Have I butchered the name? I'm old. I can claim that I don't remember these things very well.
Yeah.
We'll fix it in edit. We'll fix it in post. Just insert the correct answer.
That's right, yeah.
Just dub it badly.
Oh, look, I got no idea.
Okay, there. I'll give you a hint.
Yeah.
Think Sadler.
Oh, I remember.
Oh, hang on. Is it Tenterfield?
Here it comes.
Where's the applause?
The answer is Tenterfield. So in July 2024, they secured $8.2 million to build a bike park.
And that's it for the Forbes MTB trivia. Thank you, Ben. Yeah.
Well done, Ben. That were some great questions. I think any side would like to write a reply next week.
I think
Next episode.
Yeah, we need some post 2008 era Southeast Queensland mountain bike marathon.
It was very Kenmore centric.
Kenmore's my club, but I think I'm in a Kenmore kit. Yeah, there you go. I'm in my Kenmore jersey and the photo over there from the rail trail 100K. So.
But yeah, he's a master of all disciplines, Mr. Ben Forbes.
He's currently racing Xterra and doing exceptionally well. So, yeah.
Yes, I think, wasn't there a year he took out downhill, cross country, and I don't know, was it marathon or he took out three state champs in
Probably
1 year. Yeah, I'm thinking 5 years ago, something like that. He'll have to ring in and let us know what that was and what he's up to next.
Yeah, we should get him in.
Yep.
Or even we could get the Forbes trio. Wow, actually, there's more than a trio of them, but I was just thinking his mum and dad, who were also well-regarded and well-renowned riders.
But yes, he's the go-to around Gap Creek for high bikes coaching and the likes as well. So thanks, Ben. Well, moving on, I think we were keen to chat a little bit more about the future of MTB as far as...
Shall I get the flux capacity?
As far as, yeah. Let's fast forward. How many years? 10, 15, 20 years?
I'd like a 10-year horizon. Actually, to be topical, we could say, let's look
7 years in advance.
2032.
2032.
Ooh.
Big opportunities.
Putting the O in XCO.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh. All right.
That was a little bit sultry.
Was a bit from...
Where's the...
All right. Give me those back.
No.
I like that. I can interrupt with it.
So
yeah, look, I think, it's interesting. Ben alluded to part of the journey that mountain biking has had in Southeast Queensland, which was from a time of, we had an era where there was, and I think I mentioned this, you could ride anywhere because mountain biking was so rare that
nobody had thought to ban it yet.
Yes, it hadn't reached critical mass. And there was a threshold beyond which people went, hey, these guys are intruding on my experience in the bush and creating their own trails and, doing what mountain bikers do. So we are, it was a demonstration of demand, a change in people's preferences in how they want to recreate in the outdoors. And so, community has adapted to that over time. We now have designated trails in specific places. It's like, hey, stop doing this everywhere. Come and do it here like this, and we can manage it appropriately. So we're well on that path now. In fact, one day we should talk International Mountain Bike Association, but we'll save that for the moment. So yeah, currently the status quo. We have a number of parks that we kind of detailed off in our first episode in the Southeast Queensland region that have designated mountain bike specific single track. So I think it'd be interesting to get your impression on what you feel has changed in that recently. We can talk about flow trails versus hand-built janky stuff. And I've got some opinions on where I think things are going, and I can talk a little bit about, what we were alluding to, 2032. So
legacy.
What's the legacy? But I mean, even the event itself and what makes a good event space. So we're talking about the Olympics, which will be held in on the Sunshine Coast. But I won't ramble on with that. So, do you want to vent your spleen about flow trails?
I'm not going to say this is an event. I got into mountain biking through the first epic of the first epic was my first bike race, and it was just a national hiking and horse riding trail, and we deviated off the trail at some points, and basically you followed cattle tracks, and that is the style of like organic kind of trails. Like okay, I'm here and I need to get over there, and I'm a 4-legged animal. I'm just going to plow through this particular way. And then we come through on our bikes and go, well, we're just going to ride that same trail. And I appreciate that there's land management concerns and things like that where, water then pools in these areas, and you go, okay, well, we can put some rock protection and things like that in. But my personal preference for trail is those more sort of organic, agricultural kind of trails. And I don't have a problem with machine-built trails. Like I think, for example, the track above Rocket Frog, I think is the Strava segment at Gap Creek. And it was sort of big and wide and machine built, and it's sort of bedded in and got used, there's now sort of a very distinct kind of single track to it. And I get that it's a lot easier to build a trail with like a mini dingo than it is to do it by pickaxe and shovel. But then I think it's also some of the trails have gone kind of too far the other way. They redid Wayne's World, for example, a while ago, or probably 10 years ago at Bonya, and I thought I'd be able to ride this on my road bike, and I went out and rode it on my road bike. And it's changed since then, but it's still, I can ride it on my gravel bike easily. Like I'm not hitting jump lines and things like that on it. So, and they take a lot of upkeep, these trails. They come out to trail care. I was at trail care last weekend, and we were, because they're like, oh, the water fills in on this berm. I'm like, if it didn't have a berm, it wouldn't fill in. Like you wouldn't be able to ride the trail as fast, but then you could argue, well, you'll get more erosion if there's not a berm because people will be sliding kind of across the slope here. So there's definitely room for all of these things. And I get flow trails are fun. Mountain biking is meant to be fun.
Type 1 fun. Fun at the moment.
That's fun in the moment, yeah.
It does lose a little bit of challenge. It's a different challenge. And I think for people that grew up with a certain style, it's these new kids and their new fancy dual suspension bikes and their fast, smooth trails. Go down to, I've never ridden Boomerang Farm down on the back of the Gold Coast, but, those jumps are way beyond me and will always be beyond what I even aspire to. That real new school stuff is something that's only occurred because the trails have changed, the bikes have changed. They're a symptom of our technology. You can do huge motocross style jumps on a downhill bike that you couldn't have possibly done on a 26-inch rigid thing. You would have died. So I think there's an interplay between trails and bike technology and challenge. And the sweet spot for me is where you're on trails that challenge you, that the bike is capable of. And what was the third thing I said? But, that intersecting set where it's not too easy, too hard. You want that right mix of challenging. It's hard, but it's achievable. That right mix of technical challenge, physical challenge, and trail.
I think you're right when you say it's when you grow up with something, you're used to it as well. And I think we also all prefer the thing we're best at. Like if we're best at the techie rough stuff, personal preference, but I think it depends on where you've come into the sport and, meeting it where it's at in terms of your bike and your local trails and so forth. Yeah.
A lot of those early trails were both, animal paths or old vehicle tracks that had grown into single track. Oh, the etymology of single track. Vehicle tracks would have 2 wheel ruts, so that was double track.
Double track?
Single track.
Single track. I did a double Nebo the other weekend, and it's a mess up there at the moment after the storms and rain. And it was a great day out because it was you could argue double track for a lot of it, but a lot of it there was sort of a distinct kind of, this is the line to go up this section. And with the erosion, there was some like rocky kind of outcroppy those little punchy climbs on the way to Nebo. There are bits and pieces where you had to pick your line. And then on the way back down, like, oh no, that's cool. You just get off the brakes here and you hit 70. And then you go, actually, no, that rut's bigger than my wheel. I'm just going to slow it down a little bit here and pick my line a little bit more carefully.
So I think...
And a lot of the early marathon racing, the Boona Marathon and the original Epic and things like that, those first races where I cut my teeth were these farm trails and access roads when they weren't on these kind of cattle or animal trails. They were just kind of, proto gravel, I suppose.
Yeah, I think as the preferences of mountain bikers has moved away, well, there wasn't single track to ride. I remember going in search of single tracks and following like tiny little cow paths to see where they would go because there was an almost complete absence of single track. If you wanted single track in the early days, you built it because it didn't exist. And certainly now we have these mountain bike specific trails being built. There's a lot less preference. You don't see as many people going out and doing as much or if at all fire roads. In fact, people are using fire roads just to get to the next single track. And, if you look at, say, what would be some of the preference, so these Imber Epics or Blue Tier and Derby, it's all single track. There's no farm road in that. And, that's the mountain bike preference. It's really moved away from that. And with that increased demand and legitimacy to expand our trail networks, to hand build them is incredibly labour intensive, as you indicated, with volunteer trail care, or even to get commercial providers to build by hand. So building with small excavators is much more economical, especially in areas of high side slope. So I think the one you're talking about above Rocket Frog, is that the one that goes up towards the top of the mountain?
No, going back up towards Highwood Road.
Yeah. So the one that goes the other way has the back slope. So the trails are made up of the bench, which is the level part that you ride on, the batter slope, which is down slope, and the back slope, which is cut into when you're going across the hill. So the back slopes on that trail that goes up towards Mount Cootha are 1.5 meters to, in parts, 2 meters high. To excavate that amount of material by hand is just almost impossible. And so to build a bench that wide, you just couldn't do it by hand. And those wider benches are required for those machines, even at 1.5 metres to get down. So that's why flow trails tend to be a lot wider. And it does make them also more maintainable because it's easier if you've got in some circumstances, you might have a quad bike also going down there to do some spraying, or you might be tracking those little tracked powered wheelbarrows down there. So it does allow those trails to be upkept better, and it allows you to have a bit more freedom with your levels and your angles because you're building with a machine to make sure that you have proper outslope and drainage to avoid that situation where you have a berm that fills up with water. If you change where the corners are, which is much easier with a machine. So as we've gone into legitimate trails, we've moved away from that high intensity, scratched in single track to these machine built trails. And trails are now assets for our land managers. And like any asset, they have a life cycle. So trails bed in, and they, when they're first cut, they might be quite an impact, a disturbance. But with clever management, that can be minimised and shaped back in. And you'll find that over time they start off very smooth. And after about 10 years, you'll find it's really gotten fairly rugged. You might need to go back and do some reasonably serious maintenance. And then, they might have a design life of 20 years, at which point you go, well, it needs a full refurb. We're going to come top to bottom with a machine and rebuild it because of the amount of traffic it's had, the amount of wear and tear it's had. So they have sort of like a asset management life cycle now because they're public assets by and large. And public assets have a very different design and function to, say, like Boomerang Farm, which is on private. That's much bigger jumps, higher risks. They manage through pay for entry. They have their own self-insurance. So tracks by and large have actually got on public land safer, easier to ride, wider, smoother. And a lot of that's a function of them being public assets. You think about playgrounds compared to rope swings. These days, they've all got soft underfall. They've got fall heights that they can't be above. Whereas back in the day, you'd bang a few planks on a tree and climb the tree. You nail it in, build yourself a cubby, have a rope swing of some rotted old rope around a tree into the river, and it was a real free for all. But all those green sites or brown bush sites are all gone. You're in your local suburb now. If there's a piece of bushland, it's probably owned by a council, and it's a reserve for wildlife or for other purposes. There's those self-built trails are a thing of the past for dense urban areas where most of our population lives. So the trails have moved to suit the needs of both the users and the public land managers. So where we're going, that's where I kind of see us now. That's where we're at. We've got a few flow trails. There's a really interesting, you mentioned trail care. It's a really interesting that mountain bike riders as a community are one of the newer user groups, compared to, say, bird watchers or horse riders or hikers and walkers. And although you see a little bit of those areas do some advocacy and things, you don't see hiking groups doing volunteer trail maintenance. And it's interesting that mountain bikers are so engaged by their trails that they want to come out in their own time and improve them and fix them and maintain them. But there's a whole generation now that have grown up with this asset being provided to them for free. It's a public asset that they use, and they don't have any expectation of participating in the construction and maintenance of those things. And it's like, well, if it's a public asset, there's an argument to be made that, well, it should be maintained. And
you don't see the local Mazda MX-5 club out patching potholes.
Well, you might see them patching potholes at Lakeside,
or
but on the public road.
On public road, no.
No. So it's an interesting history of the way mountain biking has evolved.
Is that going to be part of the 2032 Olympics? We're going to be asking the French mountain bike team to hand them a shovel when they get here. It's no dig, no ride. We need to. It's trail care the Saturday before the Olympic XCO.
Well, it's interesting you put it that way, because you think about. So I've hosted, not hosted. I have in my club capacity run events, and we're out there brush cutting on these are public trails, public land, brush cutting maintenance, filling in ruts, bunting it. You don't see, you can't imagine the local cricket club having to, go and prepare a complete field. There's a field that they generally, a lot of them lease, peppercorn leases typically, but they might, they don't redo the sport field every weekend before the next game. They have a permanent lease type arrangement to maintain those publicly provided facilities. So it's interesting the way mountain biking has evolved. I think
So is that a matter of numbers? The more people in the sport, the more it will be. Do you think there's just a tipping point of how much money will be thrown and included?
It's not so much thrown. It's about what our culture is. So mountain biking used to be not part of the culture, but there are now kids like Ben that have grown up doing mountain biking their entire life. And that mountain biking has always been part, or skate parks are probably the best representation of this. So skating used to be illegal. You couldn't skate on the footpath, you couldn't skate on the road.
Skate bowls were the concrete pools in California that had been drained during the drought.
Well,
and they would get into these pools and their skateboards, and skate parks are everywhere now. And I understand they're one of the most consistently used public assets. They get 100+ hours of use per week at your local skate park. It will be 14 hours a day. There will be somebody there.
Yeah, on their skateboard or rollerblades or scooter or whatever. And you see that now that there's a provision of public assets. What's really interesting about it is it's a tiered approach. So when you look at parks and how they're provided, you might have a local park and it has a seat, or it has a swing, and that you can go down the local park. It's within the walking distance of your house. And then you might have a district park. So in one suburb there might be a peak park that has quite a lot of. There actually might even be several parks that have pretty decent set of playground equipment there, and there might be a dog off leash area now. It's another one that never used to be provided. And skate parks are the same way. You've got a local park that's pretty small, doesn't have a lot of things, but you can get there from your local area. Then you might have a district park that has a decent size. You might have a mini ramp and a I'm going to say street park, and then you'll have something that's regional. A good example of this is the BMX facility at Chandler. You've got little BMX tracks around the city, and then you might have some club ones that have, there's less of those now as BMX racing's a bit on the wane, and then you'll have a peak facility. But if you look at the way mountain biking is supplied, in Brisbane in particular, it was a venue.
That we're not allowed to race at. I can see you stewing.
No. But that's true. So you've got one venue across the city. So when I look at the future of mountain biking, as it's become normalised, because it was still a relatively new activity, but ongoing now, people have an expectation that they will be able to ride their mountain bike in their local area. So you'll have local low-quality facility, and it might just be you can ride on all the management tracks in that area, and then you've got something at a district level that has a few single tracks. And then, and we'll get to, this is where I'm going with the Olympics, you might have a peak regional facility that caters for large-scale events, has a dedicated downhill track, has cross-country tracks, and you might have an event space where it's mown grass, most of the time, but it means that when an event wants to go there, that's the footprint where the event village goes. So you've got then your start, finish, your car park, your vendors, all of that stuff sits in that space. So Stromlo is a great example of that. It has what is a big mown grass area most of the time, but that's their event space when it's an event, and it gives them the capacity to have national and international events. The World Champs was there. The Oceanias are going to be there this year. There's been multiple national champs there. We don't have that in South East Queensland. We don't have a permanent regional facility. So that is my number one.
Is that a bucket list item for you?
Well, no, that's what I hope the legacy is of the Olympics coming here, is that we
Do you foresee that at Parklands?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the Parklands context in a minute. But so I think at the moment they're still fairly clumpy, like these, district level facility. Mount Cootha is probably at capacity on a weekend, that place during good conditions and the right weather, it can be super busy. And we're actually concentrating. We're saying everyone from all over the city, come and ride here. And it's actually at capacity to the point where it probably could do with a bit more. Well, I think that there's ways in which to improve the experience for users there. And one of those ways is actually starting to look at the network and go, if everyone was going the same way, there'd be less interactions and less potential for collisions. And that's best practice to have single direction trails. It also allows you to manage them a little bit better and design them and drain them a bit better because you haven't got people going up and down things. So I think the future I see, and I don't know what the horizon is, but I think there's definitely the demand is there citywide, that there'll be more. I think that there's, at the moment, we've kind of got this homogenous mid-size opportunities like your Daisy, your Cootha, your Ironbark and Bunya. And I think there's an opportunity for some more local opportunity for people and something higher as well for a dedicated event-based venue.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any bucket list items you want to see?
Chairlift.
What's chairlift up at Jubilee Park?
It gets kicked around, that idea. I don't know whether it really stacks up. But Jubilee Park is one of those event type venues. They do have racing there, And the heart of why that works for them is because it's underneath a power line easement, so they don't have the same level of constraints that dedicated conservation reserves have. But I guess, is that the only peak venue?
Mount Joyce?
Would you?
Is in Mount Joyce any good for an event? I guess they'd have to. It's a bit of a way in from the car park to like that central hub area.
Mount Joyce was a value add to that project. So when they dammed the, it's a dam, dam, not a weir. When they dammed Wyalong Dam, thank you, on the mighty Teviot Brook. When they dammed that, part of it was giving back to the community, and that was one of the ideas. I think the challenge for Mount Joyce is that it's not close to a population centre. So the trails don't get ridden a lot. It's on SEQ waterland, but the users are kind of based in Brisbane. The maintenance isn't always there. It's very sandy, and it's on the event space is on the other side of the dam wall, and it's the event space that was used for estate titles a few years ago is actually you couldn't drive into where the event space was. You had to walk 2.5 kilometres from the car park in the hot sun down to where the actual hub was. So it's not quite all there. There's some of the elements, but it isn't really world standard event venue.
If we were chatting any mountain bike park, Hidden Vale is a beautiful spot, obviously, and the Epic obviously is a big peak event for mountain bikers in SEQ. It's a beautiful spot, but it's obviously it's a private property.
Yeah, and I think we've got Boomerang Farm, we've got Hidden Vale. What's the one that's just over the border that I keep forgetting?
So Numinbah is they've been posting. They've been out of action because of weather and all sorts of things for quite some time, but they are posting about a revamp. So keep your eyes peeled for what's going on there. And I believe they are a mixture of. They've got some pretty cool descending features, techie stuff, but I think they've got a good mix of. I haven't been there, but I think they're going to have a pretty good mix of different trails. But it's worth keeping an eye out on. So NV, Numinbah Valley, I think they're called NV Park. So keep an eye out.
It's quite difficult with Hidden Vale. It's a value add to the existing commercial activities out there. And Boomerang Farm is piggybacks on the golf course that's down there. So they're not quite Whistler. They're not or Thredbo or Mount Buller or as commercial going concerns, they're not quite.
It's a different story to relying on 100% income from mountain biking. Yeah.
So, I think the challenges are that trying to make it a commercial success, the balance between how much it costs to go there, how much trails they have, and the quality of the experience. Actually, we should talk to Tim. He's the trail manager for Hidden Vale, and have a chat to him about the challenges of it and his vision for that. So, there's a few there. They've got some of the items there, but in terms of like a world class venue or like your Chandler Velodrome or the BMX track that's there, those high peak ones, I think there's still something to go for South East Queensland. And the South East Queensland corridor from the Gold Coast, even the Northern New South Wales to the sunny coast, there's a huge population there. So I think that we might see some more mountain biking. I don't think we're going to see any more mid-sized parks. I think we might see some more local provision. I think the big opportunities are by and large settled now. I don't think we're going to find another Mount Cootha that someone didn't know about.
No. Yeah.
I mean, the remainder of Dagulan National Park between it's national park, but we ride Nevo and go. We've got this 500 meter high escarpment next to the third biggest city in the country. You can get on the trail at Slaughter Falls, about 7 kilometres from the CBD, and get yourself to, Ivanhoe Dam or out to Mount Mee, having crossed about 3 roads.
You can get almost all the way to Kilcoy in Diagula Range.
Yeah.
It is something. It is a dream. I have a dream. It's a Mount Nebo to Gap Creek single track.
Single track.
So this dream is a dream that mountain bikers in Brisbane have had way back since the 90s. In fact, I believe it was actually Australia's first world champ used to train.
Yeah, you were
riding from
the other way.
Oh, did I tell this story?
You've told the story, old man.
Anyhow,
you've been around mountain biking for 157 years, and you've got 4 stories.
Well,
But I mean, anywhere else, you look at the places in New Zealand and Tasmania that have built these amazing trail networks, like in the middle of, like Derby. It's just Derby, if you will, like
Derby.
Probably an English sort of thing. Like it's in northwest Tasmania.
So the interesting thing is that's an employment scheme. So they got funding to build that to bring tourists in,
and it worked.
And it absolutely works. The challenge in a highly urbanized context is
we have jobs.
Yeah. So how do you and this was something that Andrew Dimac alluded to, that the success of the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail is because it's right next to a huge population centre. Having a rail trail in northern Queensland, it's a very different game, and their goals are very different to how many night stays and economic return on the investment there. So there's much less opportunity for return on that investment. So I don't think they will get the same level of, or it'll take much longer to achieve the same level of quality and standard in that asset than you have in the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail. I guess when we start to move, before we move off Diagula Range National Park, I think that there is lots of opportunity in that park. It is former forestry, so it's not a pristine environment. That doesn't mean that it's not valuable, which it is. It absolutely is. It's a great repository for flora and fauna in South East Queensland. But not all of it is rare or fragile. So, and even if you do have an ecosystem type that is rare, that doesn't mean that you don't put trails through it. But that means that how you put trails through there and what their purpose is very different. So Bunya Mountains, for example, there's mountain bike trails in the Bunya Mountains, and it's a cultural landscape. It's a rare landscape because it's high, it's cooler, it's like a little island of forest up there. So their trails are a lot more about looking, learning, and experiencing the natural environment, as opposed to, let's just build a gnarly trail to go down here where it's all trail focused. So I think there's opportunity to blend the purposes and do something that's appropriate and considered for Diagula Range National Park. Starts at the little township of Mount Nebo, has a single track that runs down, and maybe it goes to back of Enoggera Reservoir and the ranger station. Rather because you can make it predominantly downhill. You don't have to climb over into Gap Creek. But I think you could have a Summit to City trail that starts at Mount Nebo, comes down, goes over Mount Cootha or around, and gets to the Botanic Gardens, goes over I don't know what that bridge is called. Does it have
the new KP bridge?
No. That goes over the highway from the Botanic Gardens, and then gets on the bikeway and goes down the Bicentennial Bikeway and finishes at the CBD. So you could literally have Summit to CBD trail that starts as a mountain bike trail.
Oh, sorry. The Botanic, yeah.
Does the bridge that goes over the Western Freeway have a name? Anyhow, there's a cycle bridge over the Western Freeway. So you've got dedicated, separated facility almost all the way from the Botanic Gardens to the city. So there's a dodgy bit at Sylvan Road, but, you could have a world-class trail experience that you could get picked up with your hire bike in the CBD and shuttled to Mount Nebo, where you stop and have lunch. This is
your Forbes hire bike, your Ben Forbes MTV.
Yeah, and then you could have a predominantly
Where's that ding noise when we do a plug?
Where's the?
There it is.
Is there any other buttons here?
You want more sounds, do you?
I want this one. Yeah, we'll work on those for next time.
I did Nebo very early this, maybe New Year's Day, and literally saw nobody. And every time I go on ride there and don't see many people, I shake my head at
It's untapped.
If you had that trail network, even as fire roads next to Sydney or Melbourne, they would never shut up about it. And we have just got hundreds of kilometres and with decent elevation changes of 550 metres to Nebo, and you have the place to yourself a lot of the time out there. Like, why aren't more people? It's a challenging ride, but it's
unless you've got an e-bike.
Yeah.
But so in terms of a product, you look at the Blue Tier to the Welborough pub, and then they shuttle you to the back of Atlas and you ride down into Derby. So that's a day trip by mountain bike. The Blue Tier is, I think, something like 80% descending. It's blue trail. It's mostly flow. It's got some beautiful scenery. You go there to experience you go there for the experience. There's what do they call it? The green goblin forest or something. It's like hanging mosses and everything's covered in green, and it's just stunning views. And the next point, then you're going through under giant ferns. It's a world-class trail experience. It's a tourist draw card. We could have that going from Mount Nebo down to the city, and it's right on the doorstep. And the point of that is the success of the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail is its proximity to population. You don't have to fly to Derby. You could just get on the shuttle in the city, either with your bike or a hire bike, and that barrier of entry of how difficult it is taken away by the shuttle. You stop and have something to eat at the cafe, and then you go down to the, Walkabout Creek Cafe, and some people finish there, others go across to finish the last leg into the city. It's an epic ride. And if I would look at it, making it a single direction, probably a blue trail, a genuine blue trail, because that's a proper mountain bike experience, not like like the experience on the dirt road is very distinctly different to the experience it would be if it was a small enclosed, under the canopy, single track, and you could take it into some of those moist gullies. I don't think you could have treat sensitively the water corridors where you get into the riparian areas. I think there's huge opportunity to build something there, which would be, the economic return would be very high.
I'm looking forward to that trail called Moist Gully. That sounds lovely.
Where's the button? It's one of our best.
But can I just ask, of everyone who's listening, I'm sure you've had a thought, or you have your own thoughts around what we've been talking about in terms of trails, ideas for what you're talking about, new trails, hubs, centres. What's your favourite place, or where do you think is a great venue? What's your thoughts on the upcoming Olympics? We are towards the end of our time, guys.
Do we want to?
Shall we?
Look, I'm just going to dive into the Olympics just briefly.
Yep.
Maybe we'll cut out some of Handyside's talking earlier.
I've just rabbited on.
Where's the
Keep changing it.
No, it's all right. So just quickly, the mountain biking will be held. So the 2032 Olympics is going to be venues spread across South East Queensland. We won't go into venues and the politics behind it, but the venue that's been selected for mountain biking is with Sunshine Coast Regional Council. They originally put forward to hold it, and I think they put forward Parklands, which is actually a national park. But since then, the Sunshine Coast Regional Council has purchased some property that's in private property that's adjacent, and they're going to be converting a large area of that for the event. And it's likely now that the vast majority, if not all of the trail, may be on the freehold land adjacent to the national park. So for a commercial event, well, I say commercial, for the Olympics, they want television. So you want long sight lines. You want an open course. When you look at the courses that were the one that was in, where was the last? Was it Japan? I'm trying to think where there was one that was like a garden, but it was fully constructed. I'm trying to remember the one that was in London, the London Olympics, but it had very little that was enclosed and under trees because they wanted to maximise what you could see with one camera. Mm-hmm. So it may actually be a bit more like mini golf. It's quite a contrived mountain bike experience, but you can see 90% of it or 80% of it with the cameras because the viewership is a big part of the mountain bikes, the Olympics. The Olympics is a commercial going concern, so they sell the rights, etc. So I don't think there'll be that much that'll actually be in the national park. And if it is, one of the challenges there is where you have an event, a big event like that, you actually almost need the mountain bike track, then you need the bunting, then you need a space so that people can see, because if you have everyone right up close, your cameras can't see, and then you need a track on this side and a track on that side. So you end up with this corridor of disturbance that can be 10 metres or more wide. If you don't build those tracks and account for people wanting to watch along the whole length of the course, what happens is people just squash everything all along the edges. You can have quite high temporary impact on either side of an event venue. So Nerang was a classic for that when they built the Commonwealth Games course. Immediately after the event, they crushed. There was a lot of foot traffic all around there, and I don't think they managed it as well as they could. And what it's meant is the legacy of that is that there isn't, the way they built that was pretty cheap. They didn't do all the things you really should for a world class. I'm really slagging them off. I better be a bit careful. There were compromises. Every trail has compromises. Unless you're really intimately involved in the construction, you won't know what the compromises were. So I've had people go like, that corner's terrible. And I'm like, yeah, but we couldn't do that for this reason and that reason. And they're like, oh, I never knew that. And I'm like, yeah. So all trail building is compromise. So, but, I think that we'll end up with less legacy in parklands, or they might build trails that are part of the Olympic, but they won't actually be used in the event. And a big part of that land that they've purchased will actually be bus car parking because you won't be able to drive to the venue. You'll have to get on a bus and get shuttled in.
From Nambour Station?
Maybe I'm not quite sure, but see...
I don't know if I said this to you the other way. I think Brisbane 2032 has missed a trick by not doing the mountain biking on the eastern escarpment of Mount Cootha, because that would be amazing to have.
There's no event footprint. This is the problem. Like a proper hub, an area that's a big footprint for the start, finish, all the tents. You've got to have a tent for every country that's there. You need a tech zone. Well, you need 2 tech zones. I think there are in a feed zone. So
there's plenty of road. There's 10 kilometres of ring road there that they could figure something out with, and they could have the backdrop of the CBD with the mountain biking venue overlooking the CBD. Instead, it's going to be. Yeah, I mean, Parklands is a great place to ride. It's challenging.
Yeah, I know Toowoomba wanted to try and get it as well. I think, it is. There's so much goes on behind how these things get awarded and where they get awarded. One of the challenges is the Mount Cootha itself has huge population pressure because it is so close. And you need to be considerate of how we manage it. The old saying is we get loving it to death. So, we do have to look at that. And I don't think that's the right place for a legacy venue, because you might be able to put it there, but it would be really temporary. Yeah, that's all right. I mean, it's a bit of a moot point. I think the population pressure that's there now is really high, and I don't think you want to add more users to it. So the front side of the mountain is where all of the picnicking and a lot of walking and hiking and exercises are there now. If you put the Olympic venue there, you'd be then adding even more use. And I don't think the western side, where there are trails now, has the footprint to cater for it. So it's one of those things, it just doesn't tick enough of the boxes to really be the right place. So I think it's been really lucky that they've been able to secure some private property next to the national park, and it's of sufficient size to handle the influx of buses, the infrastructure for a temporary event hub. So Nerang doesn't have it, and that was part of the compromise with the Commonwealth Games down there. Like they didn't have the velodrome was they were really lucky that is right next to the trails, that they were able, and it's a much smaller event than the mountain biking. So Toowoomba probably could have managed it, but again, the event hub would have to almost be at the bottom of the range of Jubilee Park, and it is quite a narrow corridor and gets quite steep. So that one's pretty constrained as well. So I think I understand. I think it's a good one, unless there'd been a left of centre venue that, like, was it Wamuran State Forest? That's the end of the Wamuran Trail up near Backabeerburrum.
Yeah, I don't know the forest very well. Yeah.
Anyhow, something like that people went, oh, hey, that's great. There's a forest there and there's some farmland here. And if we convert that farmland into event space. So I think it's the right place. I don't think Cootha is. I think there's just so much pressure going on there. It just doesn't have that right space. And I think the legacy of that venue up there will be really good. Like when it's developed, I expect to see national champs being held there on multiple occasions over the years. Like after we had the Worlds at Stromlo, I think we had the national champs there for a number of years, 2 or 3 years. And there's a test event as well before the Olympics. So that's all my intel on the venue. I don't know anything beyond that. I'm not intimately involved with it, but yeah.
Don't know if we've got mascots picked out yet, but I'd love to see an emu to celebrate the Fluffy.
Bin Chicken.
Chicken.
Bin Chicken 2032.
No, Norbert, the Fluffy, as it's
known
up at Parklands that roams around.
Actually, I'm more enthusiastic to see the bin chicken get overlooked as an official mascot, because then the amount of unofficial paraphernalia that will come out with Binny the Bin Chicken 2032.
Oh, my God.
I am already getting excited for that.
Yeah, I love a good Benny. So we can tell the story of Benny another time, but on Fluffy isn't endemic. So while a native animal, they're not native or endemic. They don't occur naturally in that area. So Fluffy and there's another one.
I wasn't being serious. I just thought it'd be amusing.
Okay. Emus, yes.
That gets the tick from Oppy. Oh, dear.
All right, well, let's... on order of time, we might put a line under the Olympics and the future of trails. It's pretty loose. That was the loose episode.
It was loose. It was wild.
Future of trails. You know what they say about the future? It ain't what it used to be.
Good one.
Yogi Berra.
Any other thoughts on 20 years in the future? What do you want to see in trails here, near or far? Got any thoughts when you pull up to your local trails? What might be different? Think
dedicated
back to
e-bike climbing trails. Tech up.
Yeah,
that's what they have it in the e-Duro. E-Enduro has like tech climbing for.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There you go.
Power segment, I think they call it.
Yeah.
Power stage. Yeah. No, I don't think that'll take off. Like I said, I think more local opportunity. You can go and ride in your local park. And there's a little track down there at the moment. We kind of have these more isolated nodes. So I think that's following the skate park model and the playground model, the park provision model. I think that's fairly likely. We'll see whether I'm right about that.
Yeah, it would be nice. I mean, I used to live along Cabbage Tree Creek Bikeway, and I would consistently ride out along the concrete bikeway out to Bunya, and it was green space with a sealed walking and bike track. And I'd kind of go like, oh, I should come out here one day and cut in some single tracks. There are these like public rights of way in places like in Europe and like the Sanford pony trails, for example, like they're great to just go for a ride, just go for a poke around the back blocks of Sanford. You get out to like High Vale on these trails, and there's nothing particularly technical about them. They just
unformed
exist.
gazetted roads, and that's the basis of the Noosa Trail network as well. So yeah, people don't necessarily want. Anyhow, we can talk bike paths. It's a spectrum from asphalt through to downhill track, and at the moment, I think we're fairly homogeneous single type of product.
Yeah, I would like to be. It would be nice to see more of that pony trail sort of, because there's great opportunities like going up over Settlement Road from Capera into Gap is horrific, but then there's the Capera bushland that's got some fire trails, but they can be steep. There's one that I can climb. Is it this way or this? If I go the wrong way, I've never climbed that other one. But basically, you could link up these trails a lot. Yeah, so I think that would be something that Brisbane could strive to easily do. Just make it easier to ride through Bunya, Ironbark, Samford, Gap Creek, just in a day. Thank you.
I'd love to hear your comments, listeners, and see if we've struck a chord with what we've talked about, or perhaps we've said
dissent.
Something, or disagree. Let us know. Let us know. It's been a very enjoyable evening with Oppy and Hubcap. We've had some good topics. We've had some interesting topics.
And a series of buttons that will not be repeated in the next episode.
Thank you guys so much. Been a blast, and write in with your thoughts on topics for the future, guys. And we may have some guest people appearing in the next few weeks as well. So, yeah, until next time, any final words?
Happy trails.
Keep it rubber side down.
Thanks, guys.